Alright, so I am working on ITA, another one of my constructed languages, and as I'm doing it here using Fieldworks, I'm discovering things that I thought might be useful to give a video out. So, ITA, like most of my conlangs, doesn't necessarily fit the traditional grammatical categories, but in Fieldworks Flex you can actually edit some of those grammatical categories now, and I'll show you how to do that. So when you first go open the program, actually you'll be here usually in the Lexicon tab, which is down here, you can see, and then you have all these options here. Lexicon Edit is usually where you enter new words as you're coining them, coming up with them. However, there's also this Grammar tab, and you can edit that as well. And then there are lists, but I think I want to start with the with the Lexicon Edit. So I was working on, let's see, what was I working on? Right, dependent verbs and dependent nouns. It's a special category in ITA. Well, let's see what I go back to what I'm here. Oh, I know what it was. So with this one, ishkaur, it has a kind of an epenthetic, no, not epenthetic, that's actually a variant of the passive form. So what I wanted to do was edit the grammatical categories in order to do that, in order to include that. Let's go with this. This is the root from which the ishka comes from. It's shiga, to bear children, and the word ishka is the way the verb would appear in a dependent clause. To say someone that bears children, you would use ishka instead of shiga. Alright. That is what I call a dependent verb. Right now I have this under variants, but I realized that I could actually change the grammatical part of it as well. And the way to do that I can't figure out is to go back to the list. There is a way to do it. Oh, I know. Yeah, I was this is the variants. So I have dependent verbs, dependent nouns, and then you can click edit the variant types. So I do that. And this is variant types. And it has irregularly inflected form. Well, similar to Payode, all my inflected forms are just about irregular. So what I was actually thinking of doing is taking this. I already put dependent for verbs and dependent for nouns. And I was going to kind of do an overarching thing, which I'm going to say noun inflection. I should probably be entering this in the grammar actually, but for now I'm going to do it in the variants. And then I'm going to take this one and move it down a little bit. Is there a way to, I think I click on it and drag it down to noun inflection, and it becomes, as you can see, it becomes a subtype. So here you have these little icons that say variant type. That means add a variant type. If you click on that, it will give you a space for, well, actually, in this case it did do a subtype. But if I were here on one of the main variant types and I click a new one, it opens a new one, on the big side of the tree. I don't want to do that right now, so I'm going to click up here, delete. And this I don't really need either. Delete. The other thing I'm playing with in ITA is verb inflection, so I'm going to add a tab for verb inflection. And specifically, I have this dependent thing, which I'm going to now take that drag it down to verb inflection, and there we go. And as you see, this is the form taken by the verb in dependent clauses, or in any kind of embedded clause, really. And there are some other things, some valency changing operations in ITA, so I would like to add a variant for passive. So you can see I clicked on this add subtype, and it gave me that, and then I entered in passive. I can enter an abbreviation, I can enter a description, and so on. Now, so there's passive, valency changing, and then there's we could call it causative, but it's not always causative. It can also make it transitive. I should probably rather call it increased valency, and then the passive would be decreased valency. That would actually be more accurate to the way it works in ITA. So I'm going to use dval and ival as abbreviations for those. And what this does is it it subtracts, or it it subtracts the possibility of one argument of a verb. In other words, if it's a typical transitive verb, then you have simply then it's simply going to become passive. That's what passivity is. You don't have a subject, you just have another object. So it is like passive in many cases, but if it were ditransitive and you wanted to make it only transitive, that could work too, but that would only work in a verb like give that is ditransitive by default. Increased valency increases the number of permitted arguments of a verb. And actually, that's probably a better way to put it in the decreased valency too. Decreases the amount of possible arguments of a verb. That is what decreased valency does. Okay? So, what that has to do with what I'm working on in terms of entering things, and specifically with this word, where is it? Ishkaur, is that it should actually have a component or a variant form, which would be, it's a variant of Shiga, and it has its own variants, which would be Shikau. Now I don't have that entered already, so I'm going to create instead of just add. And no, it's not a past form, it is a that is actually an increased valency. And so the word for bear children, when you add this increased valency, it would be the idea of bear children for someone. And then you can tell how patriarchal this culture is. You add the R agentive to make it into wife. And I'm actually going to change that component here to Ishkau, which is here. So, and delete that. So Ishkau, and then also I have this R agentive prefix, or suffix rather. And then that is a derivative. So I hope you see what I'm doing So I went here. There's this components thing, at least shows up by default on mine. If for some reason you don't see it, you can always click show hidden fields, and that will show all the possible fields you can have in this thing. But components usually shows up for me just fine, and then I click here and I start typing in what goes into that, in this case ishkau, and I've got that already, and then the R agentive, and then I can specify what type of a complex form it is, which is a derivative, and I hit OK. So that's kind of a brief idea of how to change some of the, well, it's changing variants, really. Change the list of the variants. You can also do this in the grammar section, and I should probably do it there. But for now, this variance thing is an alternative way to do it. So I hope you enjoyed this. I hope it's helpful to you as you're trying to figure out to use Flex, and thank you once again.